My name is Frank Alden, and if you'd told me a year ago that my life would split clean in half because of one phone call at 12:47 in the morning, I would have said you were out of your mind. But that's exactly what happened. One minute I was dozing off in the old bedroom I've slept in since '93, the same room I kept after remarrying because my daughter always said it smelled like Dad. The next minute the landline rang the way it did back when Sundstrand called for overtime during the strike year. Only this time it wasn't a supervisor. It was my 16-year-old daughter Lily, whispering like someone might snatch the phone from her. "Dad, I'm at the police station. He hit me, and they believe him, not me." Those were the first 10 seconds of the longest night of my life. I didn't ask who he was. I already knew. Mark Reddington, her stepfather, owner of Reddington Heating and Cooling on East State Rockford's self-proclaimed good guy, the man who never missed a church pancake breakfast because he liked shaking hands near the donation bucket. And the man Lily never looked comfortable around, though I'd let myself believe that was just teenage awkwardness. I threw on yesterday's jeans, pulled a flannel over my t-shirt, and grabbed my keys. The house was cold enough to make my breath fog, but I didn't bother turning on the heat. I climbed into my 2009 Silverado, turned the ignition, and the radio kicked on automatically, Mike plus the mechanics the living years. I shut it off so fast the button clicked twice. The roads were empty. The kind of empty only the Midwest gets on a weeknight when it's too late for the bars and too early for the bread trucks. I hit East State like a man chasing something he should have seen coming years earlier. My eyes kept slipping to the empty passenger seat, the seat Lily used to sit in, with her feet on the dash, talking about choir practice and algebra, like they were life or death. When I pulled into the lot at Rockford Police District 3, the fluorescent lights made the whole building look tired. I pushed through the doors, the kind of doors you only notice when something bad makes you walk through them. A young desk officer looked up from his computer. Had to be 25, maybe 26. When I told him my name, Frank Alden, my daughter called me. His face drained like someone unplugged him from the wall. He cleared his throat, lowered his voice so the other officers wouldn't hear. "Mr. Alden, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know she was your daughter." He didn't say what he meant, but it hung in the air anyway. If I'd known, I wouldn't have taken his side so quickly. He walked me down the hall to a cramped little room with a flickering light, apologized again, then stepped aside. And that's when I saw her. Lily, sitting on a plastic chair that looked too small for her. Lower lip trembling, jaw swollen, and on her left cheek a dark spreading purple handprint. Too large to be hers, too clear to be an accident. Something inside me, something I thought had died the day I buried her mother, came roaring back to life. She stood up fast when she saw me, like she wasn't sure I'd really come. I wrapped my arms around her, careful not to touch the bruise, and for a second she melted the way she used to when she was 5 and scraped her knee on the driveway. But then reality came back in a rush. "It was Mark," she whispered into my shirt. "He went through my backpack. I told him to stop. He snapped. And when the cops showed up, he said I hit him. And they believed it." Her voice cracked on that last word. I looked at the officer standing in the doorway. He looked away. They'd put her in that room to cool off. But Mark, the grown man who'd left a handprint on her, wasn't sitting in a room. No, he'd convinced the officers he was the victim, and they'd bought it. Even now, with Lily in my arms, part of me wanted to believe this was just a misunderstanding, that Mark had lost his temper once, not a pattern, that he wasn't the man I'd always suspected, that Lily wasn't the kind of kid who'd lie. But then Lily pulled out something from the pocket of her hoodie, a crumpled napkin from the glove box of her borrowed car. And inside that napkin, folded twice, was a little USB stick. "I found this in his office," she said. "I wasn't supposed to see it. He's hiding stuff from Mom, money, papers, and when he realized I knew something, he told the cops whatever he had to." She looked up at me, then eyes red, cheeks blotchy. "Dad, I didn't want to call you. I didn't want to ruin anything, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't tell her the truth, that I was angry she hadn't called me sooner, and even angrier at myself for ever letting her go back to that house after the little signs I'd brushed off as teenage angst. Instead, I squeezed her shoulder gently. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. You called your dad. That's what matters." But as I said it, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: fear. Because if Mark could do this, hit her, lie, manipulate the police, then he was someone who'd already learned how to play the system. And men like that rarely stop on their own. I took Lily's bag in one hand, kept her close with the other, and we walked out past the officers who suddenly couldn't look me in the eye. The night air hit us hard and cold, the kind of cold that makes a promise. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. And nothing, absolutely nothing was going to be simple. The drive to Mercy Health Hospital was quiet except for Lily's breathing, shaky, uneven, the kind a kid tries to hide so they won't look weak. I kept glancing at her in the dim dashboard, glow noticing every tiny wince she made when the truck hit a bump. The purple bruise on her jaw looked darker now, settling like spilled ink under her skin. I'd seen injuries like that back when I worked the line with men who used their fists more than their words, but I'd never imagined I'd see one on my daughter. She held that little USB stick like it was a live wire. I didn't push her to talk. People forget this, but sometimes silence is the only thing that keeps a bad night from turning worse. When we pulled into the ER lot, the building looked half asleep the way hospitals always do at 3 a.m. Lights, two bright hallways, too empty. I walked Lily inside, one arm around her shoulders, and the triage nurse's face changed the moment she saw the bruise. "We need to document this," she said quietly, guiding us toward an exam room. "Is she safe to go home tonight?" Before I could answer, Lily whispered, "Not with him." The nurse nodded like she'd heard that sentence 1,000 times. Maybe she had. While Lily was being photographed and checked for injuries, I stepped outside to breathe. The cold air bit at my lungs, and for a moment I felt like a man listening to his own life from outside the door. That's when I noticed the glove box of Lily's borrowed car hanging open. An old shoebox sat on the seat, my shoebox, the one she'd taken years ago, without me noticing. I opened it and froze. Inside was a TDK 90-minute cassette tape, the kind I used to record little things on when Lily was small. Down the side in faded Sharpie, I'd written Lily for Lily 13. I hadn't seen this since before her mother's funeral. I pulled out my old yellow Sony Walkman from the glove box of my truck, kept it there mostly out of habit, like an artifact of a life I wasn't ready to bury. I slid the tape and pressed play, and side A crackled before Lily's tiny voice filled my ears. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Her 4-year-old lisp was still there, soft and sweet, recorded on a day when she stood barefoot on the porch steps, begging me to record her concert. I felt something inside me twist so hard I had to lean against the truck. Then I flipped to side B. More static than 13-year-old Lily voice, thin and muffled like she was hiding the phone under a blanket. "Dad, I know you're busy. When Mark yells at Mom, I don't like how he sounds. I get scared sometimes. I don't know if it's me or if something's wrong." I remembered that voicemail. I remembered shrugging it off, telling myself teenagers exaggerate and Karen would never stay with someone dangerous. I told Lily she just needed to give Mark time. Growing pains, I'd called it. Listening to it now in the dark Mercy Health parking lot, I felt shame settle on me heavier than any grief I'd carried. For the first time since her mother died, I cried. The Walkman clicked off with that little mechanical sigh tapes make when they run out of space. I wiped my face with both hands, took a long breath, and went back inside. Lily sat on the exam table looking small under the fluorescent light. The nurse was finishing paperwork. When she stepped out, she gave me a look I won't forget, half sympathy, half exhaustion. "We've seen Mrs. Reddington here before," she whispered. "Twice. She never pressed charges." The words hit harder than the music had. "Twice." I thanked her quietly and closed the door. Lily stared at the floor. "Dad," she whispered, "I wasn't trying to keep secrets. I didn't want you to think I was causing trouble." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I should have listened better. A long time ago." Lily handed me the USB stick again. I didn't know what all of it was, but Mark had files with Mom's name on them. Bank papers. He kept them hidden in a folder called HVAC contracts. But they weren't contracts. They were withdrawals, transfers. Like he was moving money she didn't know about. That made my stomach drop. Karen was smart, but she'd always trusted people who promised stability. It was her weakness, and Mark knew it. "When did you find this?" I asked. 2 days ago. He left his laptop open. I shouldn't have looked, but something felt wrong. And tonight, after he found out, that's when She touched her jaw gently. "I wanted to march out of the hospital, drive straight to Mark's house on East State. and put the fear of God into him. But that would have given him exactly what he wanted: ammo. Another story to twist, another lie to feed the officers who already thought he was Rockford's golden boy. No, if I was going to protect my daughter, I had to do it with more than anger. I had to use the thing I'd avoided most of my life: the system. But the system wasn't built to make things easy. And it sure as hell wasn't built for men like me, men with calloused hands and last names that didn't carry weight. I took Lily's hand. "We're not going back to your mom's tonight," I said. "You're coming home with me, and tomorrow. We're going to start sorting this out." She looked at me with a mix of fear and something else, something like hope. "Dad, what if he gets away with it?" I squeezed her hand gently. "Then we'll make sure he doesn't." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't quite believe it yet. Truth was, neither did I. Not then. But by sunrise I would. By the time the sun came up, the two of us were sitting at my kitchen table. Lily wrapped in one of my old flannel shirts, me staring at that USB stick like it held the answer to every mistake I'd ever made. The house smelled like burnt coffee, the kind you make on no sleep because it feels like something you're supposed to do. I wanted answers, but I also knew I needed to get them the right way. That morning was a Friday, and the roads were already filling with folks heading toward East State, toward jobs they'd had for 20 or 30 years. Rockford is that kind of town. Routine keeps you alive, and breaking routine is how you know something's wrong. I dropped Lily off at my sister's place a few blocks from Sinisippi Park where she'd be safe. Then I started with the people who knew the town better than the law ever did: the VFW guys. The post 9759 parking lot still had frost on the edges when I pulled in. Two old-timers, Harold and Big Don, were standing outside with Budweisers because the clock doesn't mean much when you're retired and hurting. The moment I walked in, Harold squinted at me. "You look like a man who didn't sleep," he said. I didn't. He jerked his head toward the bar. "Sit." So I did. And after I told him why Lily had ended up in District 3, Harold let out a breath so long it fogged the bottle in front of him. "Frank," he said quietly, "you're the fourth dad in 10 years to sit on that exact stool and say Mark Reddington's name." I felt my stomach tighten. He continued, voice dropping even lower. "You're just the first one who looks like he won't let it go." I leaned back, stunned. Why didn't anyone else push it? Harold shrugged in that tired Midwestern way. "Because Mark knows the right people. Coaches Little League. Fixes furnaces for half the cops at Christmas prices. And most folks don't want trouble more than once." He nodded at me. "But you look ready." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Old school evidence first, new school evidence second. I left the VFW and drove downtown to Forest City Credit Union, the branch with the mural of the Rock River on the side. I'd known the manager, Denise, since high school. She wasn't supposed to help me, not officially, but one look at my face and she pulled me into her office. "What do you need, Frank?" "Transfers under Karen Reddington's name," I said. "Small ones, frequent." Her eyebrows pulled together like two pieces of yarn being tied. "Give me a minute." She typed faster than anyone I knew over 35, and after a few minutes she turned the monitor toward me. 42 transfers, total $62,400, all from a joint account Mark had access to, all digitally signed with Karen's name, sloppy identical signatures that no human hand would make twice. She swallowed hard. "Frank, these aren't normal withdrawals. Someone used autofill. Same signature pasted every time. Can you print this?" "Not officially," she said. Then she clicked print anyway. She placed the pages in a manila folder and slid it across the desk like it contained nuclear codes. "If this involves domestic control, document everything," she whispered. "These situations unravel fast." I knew she was right. It was time to talk to Karen. We decided to meet somewhere neutral, somewhere she wouldn't be embarrassed to be seen: the Walmart parking lot off Riverside behind the garden center, where the security camera had been broken for a year. She got out of her minivan, looking like a woman held together by headache pills and hope. She tried to smile, failed, and just handed me her old Nokia flip phone. I found this last week," she said. "I didn't know what to do with it." There was a recording saved on it, 7 minutes long. I hit play. Mark's voice filled the little parking space, hard, sharp, ugly. "If you don't sign the papers, Karen, I swear to God I'll call CPS and tell them Lily's unstable. She'll be gone so fast you won't even have time to pack a bag." Karen's breath hitched beside me as she watched me listen. "He told me. He told me I'd end up alone and broke again, she whispered. I was 50, Frank. I didn't want to start over with nothing. I was scared. Her eyes filled, and then she said something that broke whatever was left of my patience with that man. I should have protected her. I thought I was keeping peace. I thought staying quiet was safer. I put the phone in my pocket. You're not quiet anymore, I said. She looked at me hopefully. Is she okay? She's scared, I said, but she will be. Karen wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat. What are you going to do? I didn't know how to answer truthfully. The truth was, I wanted justice, but justice is never easy, never clean. I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago, I said, but I'm doing it the right way. No mistakes, no shortcuts. For a moment, she looked relieved. Then she said the words that turned my stomach to ice. Frank, Mark said he's already talked to someone at District 3, someone who owes him a favor. He's going to make this look like Lily's lying. So the fight was already stacked against me. Not just a violent man, not just fraud, not just manipulation, but a man who knew how to twist the system to make the truth look like a lie. Lily wasn't the first, and if I failed, she wouldn't be the last. I closed my eyes for a moment and breathed in the cold February air. Then I said it not to Karen, not to the sky, but to myself. Enough. This wasn't just about my daughter anymore. This was about every family Mark had quietly broken. Every woman who'd walked into Mercy Health with bruises she never reported. Every father who'd sat on that VFW stool and given up. I wasn't giving up. Not this time. By Monday morning, I felt like I'd lived a month inside 3 days. Lily was staying with my sister. Karen was sleeping on a friend's couch. And I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at a 2-inch binder, thick with printed bank statements, photographs from Mercy Health, a digitized cassette transcript, and the recording from Karen's old Nokia. It should have felt like enough. But nothing involving Mark Reddington was ever simple, and he made sure of that before noon. At 11:14 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from the Winnebago County Clerk's office. A new filing under Family Court Docket, Knocker 23 F981. I opened it. Mark had beaten me to it. He filed a sworn statement claiming Lily was emotionally volatile, that she had a history of deceptive behavior, and that I was coaching her for financial leverage and retaliation stemming from a long divorce. He even attached character references, 3 of them from people who'd never spent 10 minutes alone with my daughter. Folks from his church men's group, a Little League dad, one of his HVAC clients. The part that made my jaw lock. Mark wrote that Lily self-inflicted the bruise during an emotional breakdown, and he offered to provide a demonstration to show how she might have done it. I'd known men like him in the machinist shop, men who'd lie so smoothly, you'd question whether you remembered the truth at all. But seeing it in black and white in legal language he'd rehearsed made something cold settle in my chest. He wasn't scared. He wasn't hiding. He was preparing for war. And I was already one step behind. Detective Ramirez, Rockford East 86. I drove straight to the station with the binder tucked under my arm. Detective Hector Ramirez was in his office sipping gas station coffee and squinting at reports like they'd personally offended him. We'd graduated the same year he played football. I worked nights at the factory. We weren't friends, but we weren't strangers either. He looked up when I tapped the doorframe. Well, damn, Frank Alden. Haven't seen you since East 20-year reunion. Ramirez, I said, dropping the binder on his desk. I need you to look at something. He flipped the binder open, expecting a couple pages. Instead, he found hundreds. Jesus. Then again, softer. Jesus, Frank. 30 years of this. It's not all 30 years, I said. Just the last 10 Mark's been in Rockford. Ramirez started reading, jaw tightening, with every page bank transfers, ER photos, timestamps from Lily's call, the digitized cassette transcript, the Nokia recording. He stopped, ran a hand over his face, and exhaled. This is substantial, he said, but he's already filed his statement, claims Lily's unstable. She's 16, I snapped. She's a choir kid with straight A's and 2 friends named after flowers. I'm not saying I believe him, Ramirez said calmly. I'm saying court moves slower than truth, and Reddington's been drinking coffee with half this department for years. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. Ramirez nodded slowly. I'll reopen the incident report, but Frank, he'll fight you harder now that you're bringing sunlight in. Good, let him fight. Mini climax the school incident. 2 days later at 2:11 p.m., I got a call from Lily's high school. The school resource officer, Johnson, big guy friendly, the kind who hands out granola bars to hungry kids, told me Mark had shown up on school grounds. He tried to approach Lily when she was walking toward choir room. She froze. He moved toward her. I intervened. Did he touch her? I asked, gripping the steering wheel. No, sir, but he was loud, angry. Other kids backed away. We filed an incident report. I closed my eyes. That was the second official report in less than a week. And Lily? She's shaken but safe. We've got her in the counselor's office. You can come get her. Mark hadn't laid a hand on her this time, but he'd shown exactly who he was when he thought no one important was watching. The system loves patterns, and now we had one. The night before the hearing. The evening before the hearing, the house felt unsettlingly quiet. Lily had gone to bed early at my sister's place. Karen had texted me updates about a lawyer she might hire, and I sat in my living room staring at the old safe in my hallway closet. Inside was my father's 12-gauge shotgun, the one he bought in '72 when he worked nights at the plant. I took it out, not to use it, just to look at it. I cleaned it slowly the way he taught me: oil rag, slow even strokes. The muscle memory was so old it felt like someone else's hands moving. 100 emotions ran through me, anger so sharp it stung behind my eyes, fear that I'd fail again, and a dark, poisonous urge to take justice out of the court's hands and put it in my own. But when I was finished, I didn't load the gun. I put it back in the safe, locked it, and turned the key so hard it almost snapped. No, I whispered to the empty house. Not this time. This time we use the system he thinks he owns. Because Mark's greatest mistake wasn't hitting Lily. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the manipulation. His mistake was believing that the people he'd bullied and intimidated for 10 years would stay quiet forever. Tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m., he'd find out what happens when the truth shows up with a binder, a daughter, a mother, a detective, and a room full of people who'd finally had enough. The Winnebago County Courthouse looks different when you're walking in with the weight of your child's safety on your shoulders. I'd been there before for jury duty for a parking ticket I still swear wasn't mine, but that morning the building felt heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I arrived early, too early, the kind of early that happens when you don't sleep and don't trust yourself to stop pacing. I stood by the front steps holding the binder against my chest, trying to keep my hands from shaking, not with fear, with restraint. By 8:30, people started drifting in quietly, almost respectfully. First was Harold from the VFW with Big Don behind him, both wearing their old unit caps like shields. Then came Denise from Forest City Credit Union, clutching a manila envelope. A few customers Mark had wronged over the years sat in the back row, arms folded, eyes hard. Even Detective Ramirez slipped in through the side door, nodding once at me, silent, steady assurance. Then at 8:57 a.m., Mark walked in. He looked confident, too confident. Navy blazer polished shoes, that familiar salesman's smile turned up just enough to look friendly without showing teeth. He shook hands with two officers he knew, patted the bailiff on the back, even winked at the clerk. He looked like a man who believed the world was still on his side. But when his eyes met mine just for a second, I saw it. A flicker of something that cracked his perfect mask. Fear, small but real. He hadn't expected the room to be full. He sure hadn't expected them to be full of my people. The hearing begins. Judge Marla Jensen took the bench at exactly 9:00 a.m. She'd been a lawyer longer than Mark had been in Rockford, sharp as a nail, slow to smile. She scanned the paperwork already on her desk, Mark's statement, and frowned. Then she looked at me. Mr. Alden, I understand you have materials relevant to this case. I stood and placed the binder in front of her. Ramirez stepped forward and handed her a thin folder of his own freshly reopened reports and verified timestamps. Mark's lawyer, a thin, nervous man who looked like he practiced mostly estate work, cleared his throat. Your Honor, the petitioner is attempting to overwhelm the court with irrelevant material. Judge Jensen held up a hand. Irrelevant abuse is still abuse, counselor. Sit down. It was the first time I saw Mark's smile falter. Karen takes the stand. Karen walked up slowly, wearing the best dress she had left, black, with a blue neckline, the one she wore to Lily's 8th grade choir concert. She sat down, hands trembling in her lap. Mrs. Reddington, the judge said gently, please speak clearly and only to what you personally experienced. Karen nodded. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out the Nokia flip phone, and placed it on the microphone stand like a relic. "This is from 3 months ago," she whispered. "I didn't mean to record it. I just forgot my phone was on." She pressed play. For 7 minutes, the courtroom listened to Mark's voice, cold, controlled, threatening. "If you don't sign the papers, Karen, I'll call CPS. I'll have Lily taken for instability. You'll be alone. Broke. You hear me? I can make them believe anything." No one moved. Even the air felt still. Karen covered her mouth with her hands, shoulders shaking silently. When she finished, she didn't look at Mark. She just stepped down and sat beside me, exhausted but lighter. The retired VFW officer. Next came Harold, the retired cop. He wasn't emotional. He wasn't dramatic. He simply told the truth. "Your Honor, I've had 4 fathers in 10 years sit on a stool in my post asking about this man. Same story, same patterns. They gave up. Frank didn't. He tapped the witness table once with 2 fingers. That counts for something." Mark cracks. When it was Mark's turn, his perfect posture finally failed him. He tried to argue that Lily bruised herself, that Karen was unstable, that I was manipulating the system for revenge. But Judge Jensen asked him a question he wasn't ready for. "Mr. Reddington, how do you explain the digital signature forensics indicating the same autofilled signature used 42 times on financial transfers?" Mark tried to smile. It twitched. That's a misunderstanding. Karen authorized." "No, I didn't," Karen said quietly from beside me. Mark's smile collapsed. He raised his voice. "This is a goddamn witch hunt. They're all lying. Frank fed them this. He's been poisoning Lily against me for years." "Mr. Reddington," the judge said, voice razor sharp, "sit down." But Mark didn't. He kept talking faster, louder words spilling over each other. His lawyer tugged his sleeve, whispering harshly. Mark yanked his arm away. And that was it. The unraveling. The moment the mask fell off completely. The courtroom watched him destroy his own credibility in real time. The ruling, Judge Jensen spoke slowly, clearly, each word like a gavel strike. Based on the evidence presented, the court grants a permanent order of protection for Lily Alden. Temporary sole custody is awarded to her father, Mr. Frank Alden. Mark opened his mouth, but the judge wasn't done. "In addition, I am issuing a formal referral for criminal investigation regarding financial fraud, coercive control, and potential obstruction." The room didn't cheer, but the silence that followed was the loudest I'd ever heard. The final humiliation. Mark stormed out of the courtroom muttering, "This isn't over." But halfway down the marble hallway, 2 sheriff's deputies stepped in front of him. "Mark Reddington, yes, turn around." The metallic click-clack of handcuffs echoed down the corridor. No one said a word. Everyone just watched. A whole town finally exhaling. Epilogue, Jefferson Street Bridge, 4:17 p.m. Lily fell asleep in the truck on the ride home, head leaned against the window, breathing deep for the first time in years. The radio flicked on by accident. Mike plus the mechanics, the living years. I didn't turn it off this time. The sun was low over the Rock River, hitting the water in long orange streaks. I drove slow, steady, feeling the weight of the last few days settle into something that wasn't fear anymore. Something like peace. I looked at Lily, safe sleeping, and said softly, even though she couldn't hear me, "Back in my day, we thought you fixed things with your hands. Turns out the hardest fixing you'll ever do is with nothing but truth." And a father who finally listened. The bridge stretched out ahead of us. The river kept moving. Life kept going. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like going in the right direction. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that one voice, one truth, one parent standing their ground can still make a difference, then stay a while. There are more stories to tell, more truth to shine a light on, and more people out there who need to hear it.